Hi everyone, this is Amanda Ellis of amandaellis.co.uk, Facebook page Angelic Celestial Colours, and YouTube channel Amanda Ellis 11. Welcome back to those of you that know me well. There's a lot of people who watch me regularly. Thank you so much. Really appreciate all your support, really do. Welcome also to new subscribers. Sorry, I'm slightly distracted because there's a magpie, black and white magpie, just flitting around the window there, which is actually completely appropriate because today I'm making a video about fear, okay? So we're looking at the dark and the light again. I work with the energy of Archangel Metatron, and so really this is a very natural area for us to be in, talking about fear. And he is a being, an energy that is available to all of us to help us break through fear. But I had just noticed myself in, my own sort of post bag, as it were, emails that were coming in, people that were contacting me over the last week in particular, that there seemed to be a real upsurge in terms of fear and what I can only describe as dark energies, and people fearing dark energies in some shape or form. And my belief has always been, and I will stick by this, is that light is always more powerful than the dark. Always, always, always. There is no exception. And yet it is a very simple truth. But like many simple truths, we really struggle to accept that principle. And so it got me thinking, and Metatron was prompting me to sit down and maybe talk a little bit about that. Why do we find it so hard to push past our own fears? Why do we fear, the monsters that some of us feel are out there? And what can we do, basically, leading up to a very important energetic time? I'm making this on the 19th of July. So we are a few days before the 23rd of July, which is a new moon, and it's in Leo, isn't it? That's right. Must admit, I'm more focused on the fact it's my birthday than anything. But it is a new moon in Leo on the 23rd of July. So, and that opens up a portal, basically, a gateway, leading us up a few days later to the 888 gateway on the 8th of August of this year, which is going to be huge. It's always huge every year. This year it's even huger. And it's all about upgrade. And I said that last year, and I'll say it at next year's Lionsgate as well. I will do a separate video on the Lionsgate energy and meditation, which hasn't actually come through yet, but I'm sure Metatron will bring it through in time. So I won't go into that too much now, but I just know that this upsurge in fear and darkness and the bogeymen that are out there is linked in to this opportunity that is also coming forward in the next few weeks to bring us more light, okay? And the darkness doesn't like that. Fear doesn't like that. It likes us to stay as we are in our unevolved state and to not grow, to not lighten, to not brighten, to not expand into that fifth dimensional version, seventh dimensional version of ourselves that is available to us now. So let's look at it, shall we? I have got various bits of things all around me here, sort of prompts, just because Metatron's been speaking to me about this subject for a few days, and I wanted to make sure I covered it all. It's really easy when you sit down in front of a camera to start talking and channeling, and good stuff can come through, and then you turn off the video and it's like, oh, I also wanted to talk about that. So it's going to be a video where I just bring through some straight channeling, but equally I've also got some information that's already been given to me, okay? Let's start off with crystals and a crystal grid that I've got set out here for us. There are so many crystals associated with fear and helping us with darker, heavier energies, because essentially that's what fear is, okay? There are two primary energies in this universe. There is love and there is fear. There is light and there is dark. And so when we're looking at fear, we're just really looking at a heavier, lower vibrational energy that we can all sink into from time to time. We all do, okay? It is part of being human, but it is very much about being balanced with regard to it. Feeling fear when it may be appropriate, i.e., you know, when you're on a motorway and there's a great big juggernaut coming towards you, yeah, that fear response is there to get you out of danger. But equally, the fear and the response that it provokes in the body can be really unhelpful as well, and not appropriate, and come in at the wrong time for us, and literally stop us from growing into who we can be. So yeah, a few crystals. I'm not going to show loads of them because you've probably all got your favourites, but there were a couple that screamed at me today that wanted to be shown. A really obvious one for me was Golden Healer. I love Golden Healer. I find it very, very comforting myself. It's a good all-rounder. I've also got Citrine, you know, Happy Stone. Certainly in terms of colour therapy, when you look at the fear response, the colours that tend to help with regard to fear, anxiety, any of those sort of nervous disorders or disposition are the gold and yellow rays. So to be honest, any yellow gold crystal would be good. Tiger's Eye is also a very obvious one to choose as well. But then I was really pulled to pick another one, which I was a bit surprised by, and it looks absolutely nothing, okay? And it, you know, it's jet, okay? It's jet. And it's not a particularly expensive crystal. It's one that's easily found, particularly here in the UK, because if you go to a place called Whitby in North Yorkshire, one of my old stamping grounds, you know, they sell this in virtually every corner. You know, every shop has jet in it. And I was thinking, why? I wonder why jet is really pulling me today. And I do always like to check that, you know, what I'm pulling through is correct. So I went to my crystal book, and I will just say to you what it says about jet. I'm reading from The Crystal Healer, which is one of my favourite books here. And it talks about jet being good for yin-yang balance. We're talking about here, not necessarily male-female, but light and dark. Protection against illness, violence, and witchcraft, particularly when coupled with red jasper, helping to alleviate depression and fear. So it's like, I was really pleased to see that, and I'm going to put my red jasper dragon beside it. But I was also, Metatron was talking to me about where I got this from, where a lot of the jet comes from, certainly in the UK, which is Whitby. And it tied into, those of you that know Whitby know there is this amazing, I don't know if it's an abbey or a church, but anyway, I'm going to call it an abbey. Whitby Abbey, is that right? Not sure. I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong. But it was the inspiration for Dracula. I believe the writer lived there, or there's something definitely linked into the Dracula story. Bram Stoker, that's right. Mary Shelley. Or was that Frankenstein? Anyway, as I say, these videos are off the cuff, but I know I'm right in that there's a Gothic story linked to Whitby and the Abbey and jet, in all seriousness. And one of the things that Metatron was so clear about this week to me is he is wanting us to all snap out of the almost like Gothic fairy tale that we have been fed by Hollywood, by society down the years, about the dark and the light, okay? And it is not, I am not, and he is not in any way saying that the darkness does not exist, that evil does not exist, that wrongdoing doesn't exist, that witchcraft doesn't exist. It does, okay? But, I repeat, the light is stronger than any of it. But what's happened, and I've actually written some notes here, is that we've all been rather caught up, is what he's saying, in the mystery of it, the unknown aspect of it, And it literally is as though we are viewing life through a lens, as though we are in some blockbuster movie. And on one side is the light, okay? It's the light, and it's to do with goodness and purity and love. And we have our heroes, you know, and if you were watching the film, you would be cheering them on as they came, you know, onto the screen. And they would be the golden boys of Hollywood and the golden girls of Hollywood, you know, who would be portraying these examples, the epitome of goodness. And then on the other side, we have the dark, okay? And the dark is the monster, it's the bogeyman. And, you know, it's as though we're all expecting this blockbuster. We're all expecting to be in our seats, gripped by, you know, the latest shock, the latest turn. And particularly when we get caught up in darker energy, and a lot of people have been asking for help on this recently, you know, feeling that they have been cursed, feeling that they have spells upon them, feeling that they've been victims of psychic attack, feeling as though, you know, somebody else has got more power than them. You know, I've heard it all, to be honest with you, you know, attacks from extraterrestrial places, attacks from, you know, anything that you can dream of. And the same principle applies. Good and light can triumph over any of it. But we don't want it to be that simple, because back to the movie, back to the blockbuster, it wouldn't be a story then, would it? You know, Metatron's laughing, he said, it wouldn't be a story then, would it? It wouldn't be interesting, we wouldn't be captivated by it. You know, it's back to the mystery, the intrigue. Oh, you know, it has to be entertaining. And I'm making light of it, and I'm not meaning to, but it's like he's wanting to wake us all up a little bit. Life isn't a movie, you know? Anything that you are facing in your life at the moment, if you're feeling attacked by a darker force, a heavier force, which effectively is about fear, it always boils down. That energy, when you actually boil it down and down and down, it is a fear energy, okay? And at any time, that can be thwarted, that can be stamped out by the power of light. And it can happen right now if you want to. And the only thing that you really have to do is you have to look deep into your own heart. You have to really sink into your own wisdom. And you have to challenge your mind maybe. And you have to say, what do I believe is more powerful? Just spend a moment to think about that. What do you believe is more powerful? Is it the light or is it the dark? And we don't like to acknowledge this. We don't like to acknowledge that actually, yeah, we believe that the dark is, you know, is more powerful. And I know consciously none of you would say that rationally, but somewhere it is still lodged in there, you know? And that's why we're seeing this uprise of darkness in our world as well. We're also feeding it as well, okay? It feeds off fear. So Metatron is saying, stop all the dramas. Life isn't a movie. And he's also talking about it is that simple, but you don't want it to be, you know? Angelic help and assistance is here anytime you need it to wipe darkness from this earth, okay? To wipe darkness from your life. Who do you give more power to? I want you to think of that, okay? The other thing to say, of course, is that often we get lowered by this fear-based energy when we are struggling in life, you know? So it's no judgment. It's no, oh, you've done this and you shouldn't have behaved in that way. We get overtaken by fear sometimes through all sorts of things that can happen to us in life, you know, through pain that we all experience from time to time, loss, bereavement, illness, you know, life struggles can lower our defenses. And that's all that's needed for fear and the darker energy to creep in, okay? And I am intertwining the two energies, fear and darkness, because I do believe they are the same energy, okay? And Metatron is certainly showing me that that is the case. If you also dig deep, deep down into the fear energy, you eventually get to another word or another energy. And I want to show you what I believe that is. So if I just reach down for these two cards to illustrate it. It's effectively the fear of this, okay? It's the fear of death. Not necessarily our physical death, doesn't have to be that, but it is the death of the old way, you know, the resistance to change, the death of old ways. And if you look at this card in particular, which is from the After Tarot deck, and I do quite like the After Tarot deck actually, but I don't like this card very much because it's really gothic, you know? We've got the Knight Rider there, he's got his black flag, there are people sort of wailing underneath his feet. Doesn't look a particularly nice place. Who would want that? Who would want that energy to come in for them? So we fear that, and because we fear that, we fear lots of other things as well that might lead us to this state. There are other depictions though in terms of tarot. This is another one that's quite interesting. 13, the Release. This is from the Art of Love Tarot by, well, I can't remember who it's by actually, but you can look that up on Google. And it's called The Release, and it talks about metamorphosis, which is a much nicer way to look at it, okay? And here we've got this sort of goddess figure, and she's got the energy of the snake around her, but she feels much more in her power. You know, you can tell that this is a card which is signifying change from one state to another. But another energy that I really like, or prefer to all two of those, is this one, which is Jane Delaford Taylor's depiction of the Death card within the tarot. And this shows a sunken boat, okay? So sunken dreams, maybe a sunken life. But what I love about it, and I don't know if it's really, the camera's really showing, is all the treasure that lies on the seabed, okay? All the treasure. So death isn't the end. We know that. We know that. But yet we still don't really believe it. And we fear it, and we fear it, and we fear it. And it actually stops us living our life a lot of the time. Funnily enough, this week, I was flicking through the news as I do, and I came across something here, just getting back up on screen, which talked about this revival, you know, that death isn't the end, there's nothing to fear from death. Because I really believe that if we can remove our fear of death, we can start to enjoy life a little bit more, you know. I'll give you a really simple example of that, okay? In my life, within the last couple of weeks, I went up to see Coldplay in concert in Cardiff, and I was really, really looking forward to it. I had a fantastic time, it was great. A lot of you know that I went to see Coldplay. I put some videos up on my Facebook page. And so I was looking forward to it. There wasn't any fear attached to it for me. My mother, bless her, as soon as she heard that I was going, started to pray for my safety and didn't stop worrying about me until I came back to Bournemouth on the train the following day. The whole experience for her was one of fear, worry, that I was about to die, that a terrorist was about to come into the stadium. You know, she'd seen it all, she'd feared it all. And she wouldn't have come into the stadium with me anyway, because that would have been even more compounded her fear. But I'm not judging her. There's a lot of people like that out there. It's just an example. If you have that energy about you, you're never going to enjoy your life. I really believe one of the things that can help us to get over fear generally is the gold ray, is the yellow ray, and actually it comes in with Archangel Jophiel as well. I'll talk about that in a little while. But Archangel Jophiel comes in on a ray which talks about beauty, beauty. And I don't believe you can have beauty in the same place as you can have fear. You can't be able to see a spectacle like I did when I went up to see Coldplay. with all the lights, with all the music, with all the energy. It was life affirming, you know, it was amazing. It was a great, great moment. And you can't have in that same moment the energy of fear, okay? Or if you have it, it can't last. Because actually I did arrive at the stadium, and I said this on Facebook, I got to the stadium and I was right up in the highest probably stand away from the stage, and the slope, I'm not exaggerating, was like that. And I sat down in my seat and I just thought, oh my God, I've got vertigo, you know, I don't know if I can stay here. But of course, as soon as the beauty of it all started to unfold, there was no way that that fear vibration could stay within me. It was swept away from me, you know. Anyway, so we're talking here now about if we can remove the fear of death, okay? And there's something here, a really obscure newspaper that I've got online here that I'm looking at. It's the Fiji Times online, okay? But it was talking about some islands where coral is growing after 60 years, basically, after atomic bombs were detonated at Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands between 1946 and 1958. They had 23 atomic bombs detonated there, and the whole area effectively has been uninhabitable, has been devastated for the last 60 years. It's a complete radiation no-go. You can't go there. A bit like Chernobyl, I guess. You would look at it and you would almost think, this looks like death. You know, this is where death has happened. Yet, what's so encouraging about this is the scientists have started to go in, and they've actually found that the coral in particular is growing in huge abundance there, okay? And really, really growing in abundance. And it's the first sign of life that's coming back to the ocean there. And it's hugely, hugely encouraging, because of course when coral comes back, the fish come back, life starts to come back. So it's that wonderful example of something where even in death, even when the worst has happened, life comes back, you know? So why do we fear it so much? Let's just put that down for one moment. And let's spray a spray, because I also want to talk about fear in everyday life a little bit as well. Let's just use the magenta for one moment. Just to have a pause. And just to breathe in some divine love, because the divine does understand that we get fearful. And the divine does understand that we fear death. And I want to show you now this beautiful little statue that I bought for myself, which I feel has got something to say to us, okay? So let's have a look at that now. So this statue is quite heavy. I bought this as an early birthday present to myself. I went into a fair and I saw it, and there were three standing on a shelf, and one was marked Gabriel here, and it was totally different. I can't remember what he looked like, to be honest. One was Michael, and he had his sword, and he was beautiful. But this one was in the middle of Gabriel and Michael, and as you can see, it has no name. There's no name ascribed to this. And my eye was really drawn to it because of its humanness. It is a human being, it's a man there, but he's got his wings. And it did remind me of Metatron, because Archangel Metatron had a human existence. Of all the archangels, with Sandalphon as well, he has a greater understanding of what it is to be human. Although I do still have to remind him from time to time. As you will. If you work with him, you'll understand that joke, because they still expect a lot of us. But no, in all seriousness, he has a better understanding of what it is to be human. And anyway, I picked it up and I asked the lady about it, and it's almost like she wasn't going to sell it to me to start with. She seemed to be quite attached to it. And she said to me, she said, oh yes, she said, that one is for people that channel. And I said, oh. I said, well, I channel Metatron. And as soon as I said that, it's like her energy opened to me. And we just had this conversation about angels aren't fluffy, are they? And I said, no, they're not fluffy. They're here to really help us with the difficult, really difficult bits of being human. And if you look at him here, he is deep in thought. Okay, deep in thought. Somebody, quite a few of you actually on Facebook, said it reminded you of the Rodin statue, the thinker, or the painter. Sorry, the thinker. He's thinking, he's contemplating, but he looks a little bit troubled. But equally, he's looking down and he's not fully aware of these amazing wings that are around him. That are protecting him hugely from anything that might come in to hurt, but equally anything that he is frightened of, all he actually has to do at any one moment in time is just take a nice deep breath, breathe in, remember these wings are there, open them up and move away from whatever that fear is. It is that simple. We're back to the fact it is that simple. So I'm sure I'm going to be referring to him many times in other videos, but he just wanted to be here as a support today to say, yeah, I understand the human frailty that comes with feeling fearful. Now I wanted to show you this photograph. I don't know if it's going to come out very well. Oh yeah, it comes out quite well actually, okay? Now, this is a photograph that I found when I was rifling through my a big box of photos the other day, which I had totally forgotten about. And it shows probably about, I don't know, a quarter of a room. And it was a conference that I attended. I was probably about 28. And it was, in fact it says on the screen, it was basically, I used to be a market researcher. I used to do focus groups. That's what I did before I started this. And I had been invited to a convention to present a paper, something that I'd written with my client. And this room, I obviously took that before the room was filled. This room was filled with hundreds of my contemporaries, most of whom were a good deal more experienced than I was. So they were the creme de la creme of the industry at that time in Europe. It wasn't even in the UK, it was in the whole of Europe. And I was invited to give this paper, present this paper with my client about a project we'd been working on for 2 years. And I was very proud of the project, I was very proud of the paper, I was very proud to have been invited to be there. The moment before I had to stand up at that conference, at age 28, I nearly passed out with fear. And I remember it to this day. I remember the applause as we were invited onto the stage. I remember standing on the podium and my legs literally nearly giving way underneath me. My heart was beating so loudly I could actually hardly hear the words that were coming out of my mouth. My mouth was completely dry, I could hardly get the words out. But I've always had this knack actually, which I think is angelically given, of being able to appear much more confident than I actually am. And so I managed to get away with it. And it's always stayed with me because my client and I presented the paper and actually it was very well received and we did well. And the feeling of sense of relief after I did that was immense. Sitting in the front row, which I hadn't known was going to be there, was also my first boss, Peter Cooper. He's died now, but he was the founder of effectively qualitative market research. He, in the 1960s, really created the whole concept of focus groups. So he was way ahead of his time. I was very, very lucky to have learnt with him. But at that time that I presented this paper, I'd left his company. To be honest, I'd been burnt out. I'd walked out of the company and hadn't left on particularly good terms with Peter. And so it was a few years later, and I saw his face as I was about to present the paper, which made it even worse as well. But anyway, I sat down after giving the talk with all this fear and adrenaline that had been flowing through my body, but relief that I'd done it. And I always remember Peter said to me, he said, "The caterpillar has become a butterfly." That's all he said. And it was such a gracious thing for him to say, and I know he meant it, and he shook my hand, and we made our peace. And I think actually years later I worked for him again, but the point was that every time I look at, when I originally saw that photograph again, all those memories of fear came back to me, but far more important was the sense of achievement after I had faced my fear. What's one of the best-selling books, New Age books, still to this day, is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, isn't it? And even if you haven't read the book, you know the title of the book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And it's almost become so well known as a title, it's almost like become a cliche, and it's like, oh yeah, feel the fear and do it anyway. But there is such a truth in that. There is such a truth in that. That whatever it is, it doesn't have to be standing up in front of a conference. It can be something more everyday, smaller, that you feel is more insignificant, but isn't actually. Because it's all about tiny, tiny steps sometimes that we need to take. But when we've taken them and we've faced our demons, we've faced our fear, there is just this flood of accomplishment and increase in self-worth as well that comes from having done it. And I encourage all of you leading up to August and beyond, where we've got this upgrade of energy, where we're all being encouraged to be more empowered and to step into our light more and more, to try and do one thing that actually just pushes you out of comfort zone, moves past your own fear, so you get that sense of accomplishment. I've known people and I've counselled people before who suffer with agoraphobia, for example, and they've been able to maybe take a few steps outside the front door. I would applaud that. I would applaud that, and I would be pleased for them, you know? It could be a fear of holiday time is a great time where fears come up. People are frightened of getting on aeroplanes. Get yourself on that aeroplane. Don't let it stop you, you know? My daughter, who is 11, who's been very, very shy for her whole life so far, but is coming out of herself, has quite a lot of fear. She did paddleboarding for the first time a few weeks ago with the school, and she had to write something for her end of year report, just sort of saying what she'd liked about the last year of school. And I was so proud of her, because on this report, and she wrote it herself with no prompting, she just said, and I tried paddleboarding and it was really good for me because I confronted some of my fears. And that is out of the mouth of an 11-year-old, okay? So whether you're 11, whether you're 111, there is still things that we can all do to just push ourselves a little bit out of comfort zone. And the more that we do that, the more that we confront our fear, the more that we grow, okay? So yes, this this time in your life is the time to really question, what do you give attention to? Do you give attention to your fears? And if you do, you allow that to grow. You allow a heavier energy, a lower vibration to attach itself to you. You allow yourself to become more open to attack, whether we want to call it psychic attack or just depletion of energy, feeling down, feeling low. Or do we want to just take a nice deep breath together and try and go for it? Really try and go for it. And let's bring in the Archangel Jophiel energy now and the gold ray to just help us, okay? Archangel Jophiel, as she is presenting herself right now, feels like the complete antithesis of what we were describing earlier in terms of death, okay? Or the fear of death, because as we know, death isn't a negative thing anyway. It's metamorphosed into something else. But Archangel Jophiel to me just feels about life, because it's linked to the sun. And without the sun's energy, we can't survive anyway. Life-giving, vital energy comes with Jophiel. And he or she teaches us about beauty, about joy, about moving past our fears and living our life. So let's just feel a bit of that now. So if you just settle down and bring in the yellow and gold ray of Archangel Jophiel. And any fears that you've got at this moment in time, any sense of anxiety that you've got at this time, any sense of dread that you've got at this time, allow the golden light of Archangel Jophiel to come in like the rays of the sun and burn away gently and easily those old thought forms that create these conditions. Replacing anxiety with joy, replacing dread with a sense of expectation and hope, replacing depression and sadness with joy and happiness, replacing fear with courage. And Archangel Jophiel and the golden ray also linking in to the energy of Leo, which is coming in now, literally knocking on the door. Lion strength, courage, the roar, your roar. It's time for you to roar, and it's time for you to soar as well. And it's a time to allow the fears that you hold to just float gently to the ground like lead, because they are of a lower vibration. And I repeat one more time. What do you believe is the most powerful energy in this universe? Is it light and love and joy? Or is it the darkness and fear? You do have a choice. Who do you give your power to? Who do you give your attention to? Who do you give your time to? Which energy? With love, with thanks, with appreciation for all of the journey, I'll leave it there, and when I next speak to you, we'll be getting ready for the Lion's Gate. Namaste everybody, lots of love.